Hi, it's Mark from Top Local. We're here with Bernie Pawlik, Pawlik Automotive in Vancouver, Vancouver's best auto service experience, 22-time winners of Best Auto Repair in Vancouver as voted by their customers. We're talking cars. How you doing, Bernie?
Doing well.
Landrovers, an LR2 2009 with a crankcase vent valve replacement. What was going on with this vehicle?
So the vehicle came to our shop with the client's concern was there was a noise, like a noise coming from the engine area when after the vehicle was driven for a while, it's good and hot. So I had to look at a few things. We did actually do a repair. We replaced the serpentine belt tensioner because there was some noise from that issue. We ran it for a long time, never heard the noise, and then finally after some time the noise reoccurred, and we were able to find the noise was coming from the PCV valve or crankcase vent valve.
So what's involved in replacing this part?
So this part, basically, it's an assembly that bolts onto the back of the intake manifold, not an incredibly difficult repair. Fortunately, it's pretty accessible once the engine cover is removed. Basically a bolt-on, bolt-off repair and a little bit of computer reprogramming afterwards too, which I'll explain a little later on, but that's basically what was involved.
So what goes wrong with this part?
Well, basically, let's have a look at some pictures, and I can show what goes on with this part. So here's our nice 2009 LR2, really good, again, really good condition. I was thinking we have a lot of clients who keep their cars in good shape. So this car still looks like a brand new vehicle, which is a good thing, good to do. This is the piece right here. This is the top of the crankcase vent unit opened up. The actual problem is this little round area there, and we'll have a closer look. But as you can see, these are where all the bolts go. So there's quite a few bolts that hold this piece on, but it's fortunately accessible, not buried as these are on some vehicles and engines. Here's the underside view of the part. Again, not much to see. It's a piece of plastic, and again, like the vent valve unit is basically over here in this particular area here. But there's basically suction from the intake manifold, and then the rest of it connects to this area here, connects to the crankcase area, so it sucks the fumes out of the crankcase. And what goes wrong with it, there's the unit there, but this is the rubber diaphragm. This is the part that goes wrong. There's a spring and a diaphragm, and depending on engine vacuum, it will actually suck a certain predetermined, I would say calibrated, that's the word I'm looking for, calibrated amount of combustion gas back into the engine, burn it up, which is a huge reducer of emissions. There's the problem with the unit right there. You can see this rubber diaphragm is torn, and that's what was causing our issue. So how we knew, besides once we heard the noise, what's a really good indicator of this problem is when you open your oil filler cap, all of a sudden you get, with the engine running, there's an enormous amount of suction. And sometimes it actually requires a bit of force to lift the cap off. Not pliers or anything, but like the hand force is abnormal, and you can hear a huge amount of suction, and you'll notice an enormous kind of change in noises and suction of the engine. So that's a good indicator that this part is blown.
So again, why would they use an electric or so it breaks? Why is it there? Why is it, what is this doing in terms of the vehicle?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it's emission reduction. That's the primary purpose. This part goes by a couple of different names. I call it a crankcase vent valve. They may call it a PCV valve, which is positive crankcase ventilation. That's kind of the more common term. But the whole purpose of this device is to basically take the blow-by gases that occur in the crankshaft and internal combustion engine and suck them back into the intake manifold, reburn the gases, because the pollutants that come out of crankcase blow-by gases are hundreds of times worse than what comes out of your tailpipe. In the old days, and we're talking back in the 60s, with a gasoline internal combustion engine, before they had PCV valves, they'd have a thing called a road draft tube, and that would vent the crankcase gases. Crankcase gases happen because as the combustion process occurs, some of the combustion escapes past the piston rings and goes into the crankcase. If you didn't have a vent, they would just blow something apart in the engine, like the oil pan would blow off or something like that. So having the vent allows the gases to escape. But if you ever smelt these gases, I mean, it'll knock you out in about 2 seconds. They're just horrific. So that's what the PCV valve basically reduces, that emission. And so these are just a little more sophisticated of a system, having that diaphragm like that. But a lot of people might be familiar with the old traditional PCV valve, just a little round metal piece with a plastic elbow. And it used to be the kind of thing you'd change every couple of oil changes on an old American V8 or some Japanese cars. But it's become much more sophisticated and often part of the engine. Some engines, they're even actually part of the valve cover. So if the PCV valve goes bad, you have to replace the whole valve cover. which can be a pricey repair.
So is this unique to Land Rovers that these wear out?
No, it's not. I was kind of alluding to in the last item I mentioned, they used to be a kind of easy replacement item in the days of the little PCV valve. But this type of big diaphragm PCV valve is commonly used on European cars, and they do fail on pretty well everything. BMW has some rather elaborate, even larger ones, and more difficult to access units on their 3 Series for their straight 6 engines for many years, like in the early 2000s. They failed all the time in a similar fashion to this one. So it's a common replacement item, and we do a lot of them on Land Rovers, but they don't all require replacing this unit. The V8 engines, the V6s, they use a different, similar concept, but you can actually just replace the diaphragm in a kit. So it makes for an easier and less expensive repair.
So how did the vehicle run after the repair?
Oh, fantastic. Except there was actually one issue, and that is the noise went away, and then it would kind of reoccur in kind of a strange fashion. So our solution for that was basically there was a reprogramming procedure, not a reprogram, but a relearn procedure with the engine computer. So what happens is, of course, as the engine's been running for a while like this, the fuel system adapts to this excessively lean condition that's occurring from the torn PCV diaphragm. And once you replace the part, it works better, but the computer isn't fully adjusted. And given time, it would probably work its way out. But of course, delivering to the customer with noises doesn't instill a great deal of confidence in that the repair is done properly. So with a reprogramming procedure, it basically resets the fuel trims and mixtures back to normal, and then the vehicle will compensate and adjust from there, but it basically that repaired it all.
So we've done quite a few podcasts about the Land Rover LR2. What's your feeling about the reliability?
Pretty good car. There are a lot of things that do happen. I mean, this vehicle is the same as a Volvo XC70, and a couple perhaps other Volvo model, but same as an XC70 Volvo. As a matter of fact, I didn't point out, but that one of the early pictures that I shared earlier says FOMO Co. right on top of the part. So this is like when Ford owned Volvo and Land Rover, they built basically this platform. So it's pretty good. There are some things that are, that we've talked about a lot on podcasts. The rear differentials on this vehicle will go bad. It's a guarantee at some point that the rear differential bearings will go bad. The serpentine belts are very complicated, the drive system. So that's a very expensive item to repair as well in these vehicles. But overall, they are pretty good for reliability. And it's a nice size little compact SUV all-wheel drive vehicle. So if that's what you're looking for, it's a pretty good vehicle. Just expect that you'll probably spend a little more money than you would on. As I say, I always compare it to the Toyota. That's the benchmark. But overall, pretty good vehicle. You'll just need some repairs that you'll need to do.
If you want expert repair on your Land Rover or Volvo in Vancouver, the guys to see are Pawlik Automotive. You can reach them at 604-327-7112 to book your appointment. You have to call and book ahead. They're busy. Check out the website, pawlikautomotive.com. YouTube channel, Pawlik Auto Repair. Hundreds, not exaggerating, hundreds of videos on there about all makes and models, all types of repairs. We appreciate you listening to the podcast, watching. Leave us a review if you like what we're laying down. Thanks, Bernie.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it.